All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our presentation tonight, Woolly Mammoths of Iowa. This event is sponsored by Jackson County Conservation, and we are located in eastern Iowa along the Mississippi River, south of Dubuque, north of Davenport, here in eastern Jackson County. And I guess a good thing, this is a virtual event tonight. We don't all have to be out driving on the roads tonight as the snow starts to fall. So hopefully you guys are all enjoying this from the comfort of your homes. Everybody's safe. We're excited for our a series of events we're doing this winter. Jackson County Conservation is a county government agency, and my name is Jessica Wagner. I'm the Environmental Education Coordinator for Jackson County Conservation. We manage county parks, including campgrounds, river accesses, interpretive center, trails. You can paddle the Mahaska River and hike woodlands and prairies. And so pictured here is our nature center. It's the Hurstville Interpretive Center. This is where our offices are. And this is kind of our headquarters for our environmental education. And so we host schools for field trips, and we offer public programs related to outdoor recreation and natural resources. So tonight's program is part of kind of a series we're doing this winter in light of all the COVID pandemic. Not doing as many in-person programs. Some of our in-person programs are being held outdoors. So in the last few weeks, we've been doing a lot of snowshoeing and a little bit more snow here. We'll be doing some more snowshoeing if anyone's interested. We have snowshoes that you can use free of charge at the Hurstville Interpretive Center, just north of Mahaska. And in anticipation of the snow, they're available to use this week. So here on your screen, you can see some other events we have coming up. Tonight is our second program in our series of 6. We're offering 2 each month through the month of March. And so we're excited to host Laura DeCook, and she is naturalist for Mahaska County Conservation. And she is going to talk to us about woolly mammoths of Iowa and some digs that they have done in the last decade there in Mahaska County. So Laura, I'm going to actually just turn it over to you here and go ahead when you're ready.
Hey, welcome everybody. And yeah, I'm glad we're virtual tonight because it's snowing like crazy outside. And so what I plan to do tonight is to give you a lot of information about woolly mammoths, describe what life was like back in the last ice age, and perhaps what the life was like for woolly mammoths and how it came about in finding woolly mammoths down here in Mahaska County. Our county seat is Oskaloosa, and so these bones were found not too far from Oskaloosa back in 2010, and I'll get more into the story just a little bit later. But we don't really exactly say where the bones are found. It's kind of an agreement that we have with the landowner to give him some privacy so he doesn't get anyone just walking on his land hoping to find bones and causing some mischief in that area. But he's been very, very welcoming to us over the years in giving opportunities to dig for bones and learn about the history of Iowa. We haven't dug up any bones for several years, but during the time that we did, we've gathered a lot of really interesting information. And I'm going to pause just a second so I can share a screen with you. And I've created a presentation for us. And let's see. This is not letting me see. There we go. Slideshow. I'll just switch over really quick. Okay, so we're going to start off talking about mammoths in general. And I'm actually going to start off by giving you a little quiz just to kind of tickle your brain a little bit, see if you've heard of any of this information in the past. Now we have a question and answer box found on our screen. And if you would like to type in your answer real quick, I can recognize you for it or see how many people do know the answer. So we'll see how that works. So we're going to start off with the question, what species of mammoth was the largest species? Now, a fact that you may not know is that there are various species of mammoths, just like various species of cats and dogs. They come in different sizes, different shapes, and mammoths were the very same way. Does anybody happen to know what mammoth was the largest? And of course, I start off with a really tough question. So I will show you a picture that I found. Mastodon, good guess. An imperial mammoth. You're right, Marion. Imperial mammoth was the largest one. And this is a picture I found to show the various different sizes of what they would have looked like side by side. And the imperial mammoth would have been 16 feet at the shoulder, which is larger than the woolly mammoth, which could be anywhere from 12 to 14 feet at their shoulder. So what species was found down here in Mahaska County? See if everybody listened correctly. Yep, and we have a woolly mammoth. Good job. If you said woolly mammoth, this is the one that I'll be talking about in particular because this was the only species that we found down here in Mahaska County. Now, the woolly mammoth is known for a few features. If you take a look at these really long curved tusks, those tusks on males were about as big around as coffee can circumference, and they could be 16 feet long. We also note that the woolly mammoth is very hairy. They have long, shaggy fur, and they also have a knob on the top of their head. After a while, we're going to compare them to mastodons because they also had more hair. But let's go to the third question. The species of a mammoth can be determined by looking at what? Your options are 1, 2, 3, or 4. Is it the femur, the teeth, the tusk, or all the above? What is your guess real quick? Okay. Our answer is the teeth. This is a picture of teeth that we discovered here in Mahaska County. And what you're looking at is the bottom side. This is the side that they grind their food with. Mammoths are herbivores, so they eat plants and vegetation. And we can tell that these were woolly mammoth teeth. If you take a look closely, you'll see horizontal lines on these teeth. And those lines, the spacing between it, tells us that they're woolly mammoth. Had they been another species, say Columbian mammoth, those lines would have been spread further apart. So we can tell by the teeth what species they are. Okay, how many teeth are found in a mammoth's mouth? And you can give a guess if you'd like. I'll give you a quick clue here. We have a picture of the bottom jaw, and there are actually 4 altogether, 2 on top, 2 on bottom. Often when I ask this question, we get everything like up to 186 because people think, wow, they are really large animals. They must have a lot of teeth. But they have 4. And what's really interesting about these teeth is they chew their food. The vegetation is very hard on their teeth. They wear down. Now, if you've ever looked inside the teeth of an animal, say a deer or a cow, as they get older, their teeth are worn down to the gums and they can't eat as well. They lose their body mass. They're not as thrifty in health. Mammoths can get that way too. And to help give them a long life was a very interesting fact about mammoths is that they go through 6 sets of teeth. Now a tooth would fall out not all at once, but one would fall out and another one would move up in. So they kind of grow up and out of their mouth as they're worn down. So they go through 6 sets of teeth, and if a mammoth would be healthy throughout that entire time, their life expectancy would probably have been, the best we can figure is about 70 to 80 years old, kind of comparing to what elephants are today. Okay, now during the last ice age, the ice age is a time period when there were a colder climate in the winter time, and even the summertime would have been cooler than it is today. A large glacier sheet had moved through Iowa from the north to the south, and I'll show you a picture of that in a bit. But there were also other ice age animals during the same time as woolly mammoths. So you get another choice here. You can vote for 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. Were there saber-toothed tigers, ground sloths, elk, camels, or all the above? Nope, I was a little quick on the gun there. It's actually all the above. All of these animals have been known to be living during the ice age. And you're thinking, camels, really? Yeah, it's actually long ago I was doing a lot of research trying to find out what animal species could have lived in Iowa. And there was documented evidence of camels that were radiocarbon dated back to the same time as all of these other animals. Now you might be wondering, did we find any of those animals at the mammoth dig site? That would be a really good question. And the answer is no. The only thing we found at the site were mammoth bones. Okay, nothing else. Okay, so here are some little pictures of some other animals, some that we had mentioned. And the top left animal, you would recognize that as a bison. Today, the North American bison, or buffalo that we call them, they are the North America's largest land mammal that lives today. Back then, the Ice Age animals would have been a lot larger. Even in Antarctica today, places where it's extremely cold, you'll find the largest bear, the polar bear, and they're able to tolerate the colder weather, being larger animals, having more stored fat, and other adaptations that they have. Well, the bison also were a good example. Now, today's large bison, their horn spread would probably be a 1.5 to 2 foot wide, probably at the widest. Now, from tip to tip, the horn spread back then during the Ice Age, the bison's spread would have been 6 foot. So that can give you an idea how much larger they were. Does anybody know what this middle character is here? This is an animal that has been discovered in Iowa, down in southwest part of Iowa. And it is a three-toed, it's a ground sloth, related to the three-toed sloth and other species of sloth that we have today. But this animal, it would have been about as tall as the mammoth. They were incredibly large, and they could stand on their hind end and reach up into the tree branches to eat the foliage, as you can see in that picture. Yep, so looks like we're getting in some good answers. Now, a lot of times we think of Ice Age these days, and especially kids, they go, oh, I know them, all the movies. How many of you have seen all the movies? I probably have too. Well, we notice that we have a giant sloth, we have the mammoth, saber-toothed tiger, and these little possums here. But in reality, Sid the sloth would be the same size as Manny the mammoth. But of course, that's the way animation movies are. You have to make them a little smaller and cuter. But this is a good way to relate to what animals used to live back in the Ice Age. Okay, now we had mentioned mammoths and mastodons early, comparing them. They're kind of, you could call them, I would say, more like cousins. They're kind of related. As you can see, they're very elephant-like. Animals such as elephants and mammoths and mastodons, we can call them proboscideans. That means they have the trunk appendage that they use and manipulate, sort of like an extra hand. They use that for breathing and helping them eat. So both of them lived long ago, up to 10,000 years ago, and they would have had the same number of teeth. However, their teeth looked different. The mastodon teeth were more conical. They look like mountain ridges on their teeth, and where the mammoths would have had flat ridged molars, just like the picture you had seen earlier. They would have both been herbivores, ate plants, lived about the same age, and they had smaller ears. Their small ears were a special adaptation so they didn't freeze. Now, if you look at, let's say, an African elephant today, their ears are larger and they use those to flap them and cool their bodies off. So they're a good species to look at different adaptations in survival. They both had a lot of fur on their bodies. However, mastodon was a little different. Their tusks were straighter. They lived in more of a temperate woodland area instead of a grassland like the mammoth. They're shorter and stockier. And besides eating grass, they would also eat woody vegetation. Who would win? I'm kind of getting a coded pictures here. I'm assuming it says, is it a mastodon or a mammoth? I'm not sure. My vote would be for the mammoth because of their long tusks. They would use their tusks in protection and fighting. They could also use them like giant shovels to scoop snow away. They can push trees down to eat some vegetation out of it. Let's see. Here's another close-up picture between the mastodon and mammoth. You notice they look totally different. Okay, now let's take a look at modern elephants' teeth. And today we have two elephants in existence. Of course, the mammoth and mastodon are extinct. They no longer exist. So we have the African and Asian elephant. Now, one of them looks very similar to a mammoth tooth, and one looks very similar to a mastodon, doesn't it? Okay. Oh, I see. Your question was, who would win, African elephant or woolly mammoth? I would probably go for the woolly mammoth if I had to bet on one, just because of their large size and their tusks. That's a good question. It would have been fun to see, wouldn't it? Okay. So those are the teeth of modern elephants. Let's take a look at how long ago these animals lived. And we're looking back in a timeline. This is a timeline that some scientists have created. Right now we live in where it says recent. Okay, the Pleistocene epoch ended about 12,000 years ago, 10 to 12,000 years ago. And as you look down the chart, the timeline gets older and older and older. And way down in the Paleocene is where 65 million years ago was the end of dinosaurs. So this is a scientific timeline that's been created. And so Pleistocene is where the mammoths in the last ice age would have been. So they seem like they lived extremely long ago, but according to this chart, you can see that they're relatively young as far as this timeline is. Now, back in the last ice age, there was a glacier in Iowa. And this is a large sheet of ice that spread across the state from the north. And it reached all the way down to Des Moines, and that's why it says it's called the Des Moines lobe. Des Moines was the very southern tip, and evidence of this today can be seen as you drive like north on the interstate on I-35, or if you travel up into some of the counties in that area, you notice that the land is very flat. That's flattened from the glacier. And a lot of really rich farmland is up in that area due to the glacier. And the Ice Age animals would have lived right next to the glacier, not on top of it, kind of like the Ice Age movie shows them on the glacier and in the glacier. And they would have lived more off on the side. So Southwest Iowa is where the giant sloth was found. And all across Iowa, you can find evidence of mastodon bones. And of course, down in Mahaska County, we have the woolly mammoth. Let's see. Now, during our dig, we had a lot of different scientists, people that came and studied. They came and actually helped dig. And they were wonderful resources to ask questions about. And one of the questions asked was, what was Iowa like back then? If we looked out the window, what would we have seen? Totally different than today. And I find this question really interesting because a lot of times, well, as I grew up, I thought, as far back as I could remember, it probably looked like the time when Native Americans lived here before westward expansion. But actually, it was a lot different before that. Iowa could have been described like a patchwork quilt. You know, you have different squares of different colors and designs. Well, if we flip those into different types of habitats, we would have had glacier in part of the state. We would have had grasslands. That would have been a great place for the woolly mammoths to live, and into deciduous forests like we have today. One of the trees that lived back then that we still have today are the Osage orange trees, which are also known as hedge trees. They have the big hedge balls. Mammoths were known to eat the hedge balls. There was also boreal forest, and boreal forests are areas of a wooded area that has fir, spruce, and larch or small wetlands scattered throughout. The ground would have been, I guess you could say, a little mushier because that type of climate, it will freeze and get very hard in the wintertime. It'll soften up in the warmer climate or warmer seasons. There would have also, let's see, I think I said deciduous forests. So a wide variety. And the reason why these scientists say that is because of the different species of Ice Age animals found in Iowa. Each one needed a specific habitat. So for example, the mastodons would have used more wooded areas. The mammoths would have used the more grassland areas. And all of the other species had certain requirements. So the best they can gather, all of these habitats were scattered all around Iowa. How do we really know what these mammoths look like? One way is to study what the mammoths that have been found trapped in glaciers. And other parts of the world, they've actually taken out mammoths in glaciers, and that actually have their fur. I think they've even found one that even had a sample of blood so they can get the DNA from it. And it allows them to really see what they would have looked like. And taking a close look at these amazing mammoths that were captured in ice, they can see how alike they are to today's elephants. Other indication of woolly mammoths in the past have been found on stone. drawings that people had made long ago. And yes, there were evidence of people that lived the same time as mammoths. They would have hunted the mammoths, just like what we understand about the Native Americans that would have hunted bison. They used every part of the bison as an integral part of their lives. The mammoth would have been also using them for meat and clothing and a way to survive. You can see in this picture that the indication of long hair on the mammoth shows that it's a woolly mammoth, plus that big knob on top of its head. That's very characteristic of it. So let me tell you the story about the bones that have been found in Mahaska County. Back in the summer of 2010, late July, August, and into August, there was a lot of rain. And I remember that because that's when I moved to Mahaska County to become naturalist. But little did I know that all of that water that fell from the sky would create an interesting and educational opportunity. On a farmer's land, we call him Farmer John, that rain had created a washout next to a creek. And so it opened up the earth. He and his sons were out looking for berries, and they're just kind of tromping through the pastures behind their farm. And they noticed in this gully that was created by the water, there was something big and black sticking out. It was about the size of a bowling ball, if you can imagine that. It was black. So what you see is that black round part next to, this is Farmer John in the picture, but next to his hand, that big round part is the ball. And this is a femur bone, which is the upper part of the leg. So that black round part, the ball would fit into the socket of the hip. And of course, if you take that out of the ground, you would think this was a large animal. This is something pretty special. So the farmer had taken it to the University of Iowa's Museum of Natural History and had their experts take a look at it and help identify it. They're a great resource. If you ever find an old bone, they can help with identification. And they said, this belongs to a mammoth. Well, where you find one bone, there's likely to find others. So over time, that next year, he found a lot more. Well, after some thought, Farmer John contacted our conservation board and said, you know, we have these bones that we're digging out of the ground. We would really love to have some help and have these bones end out being available for the community to actually see and learn from. So our conservation board ended up helping with the digging, recruiting volunteers. So we had groups of college kids, we had classrooms from schools, we had business organizations come to have a work day together. We had a wide variety of people come out and learn how to dig up mammoth bones. And so eventually over time, our conservation board was able to purchase the bones through a trust, and we have them in our possession. And all but a select few that the landowner decided to keep. So we have those on display at the Environmental Learning Center on the east side of Oskaloosa on Highway 92. And it's a nature center that you can come and take a look at it. At the end of this talk, I'm going to explain another neat display we're going to be having regarding the mammoths. So that's kind of a short story of how the bones were discovered. Well, over time, we were digging up bones. And if you think you're going to dig up an animal, you would expect that it would die lying down in some fashion. So you know that the femur bone would be connected to the hip bone and so on and so forth. However, that wasn't the case. These bones are scattered everywhere. So it's sort of like finding needles in a haystack, but it's under dirt. Now, over time, this has become known as an important site for mammoth And why is that? Well, these bones have never been dug up before because we were the first ones to see the bones since these animals had died and been covered up. It's all woolly mammoths that died at the site. That's the only species that were found, and more than one woolly mammoth was found. There are actually definitely 3 mammoths, and we can tell that by the teeth, the number of teeth, and matching them up, and also with the scapula or the shoulder blades. We can tell there were 3 different mammoths, and all the bones were from woolly mammoths. Another interesting thing is that we know these mammoths died at this site because we find the big heavy bones that would be very hard to move, even naturally through weather or such as water. But there were also very small, lightweight bones mixed in together. Now, had there been a really large flood pushing through, the bones would have been scattered downstream at some point, especially the lightweight ones. They would not be found there. But now we never did find all of the bones, even to make a complete mammoth. We kind of ran out of time, ran out of money, and not really sure which direction to dig. I'll show you a picture of the dig site. And this was early on, probably within the first couple of years. There was a lot of handwork. First, I'll note that there is a wet area down in the bottom of the hole, and that moist water was actually beneficial for a lot of the bones that we found. There's an underground spring throughout this area. Now, I mentioned how mammoth bones and mammoths have been found in glaciers, in ice. That is the best way to preserve an animal. It really traps out oxygen. The next one would be in water or in moist ground, such as what we found. So the animal fur and muscle and tendons, all of that decayed, but the bones were left in very, very good condition. They never did fossilize after all this time. Wherever the bones were found in moist soil or where a natural spring was predominant, they were not brittle. If they were in a drier area, the bones were extremely brittle. So what we have people shoveling with shovels, and the ones down on their knees, they're actually using a hand trowel like you would use in a garden to shave away the dirt. And any dirt that did not have bones in it would go into a 5-gallon bucket, and someone would be nearby to pick up the bucket and dump into a pile like you see in the top left-hand corner. And so it was tedious work. We would work as long as weather would allow it, even if it got cold or if it was a little rainy, even hot. So it was it's kind of tedious work, but it was really fun. We would use an ice pick with a long probe on the end, and we would poke that ice pick into the soil to kind of see if it taps something, to see if there are any bones in the area. And we found a lot of rocks. But what's interesting is after enough practice, if you probed with that ice pick, you can tap it and tell by feel and sound if it's actually a bone or a rock. So there were some really neat experiences. Have we ever found any other fossils was one of the questions. No, the only thing that we found on this site was woolly mammoth. Let's see, we'll go to the next slide. These are our pictures from the mammoth dig. The girl on the left, she is using a brush and water in a bucket, and she's brushing off a rib. So that long curved object that you see is one rib. The center picture is someone that's holding a rib. And the third picture on the right is a part of a tusk. And there is a work glove situated next to it. So that one is close to 6 foot long, 5 foot long, right in there. And so you can see the size of it. So that's just one section of the tusk. A question has popped up, how do we know where to dig? Well, the dig started in the area that the first bone was found, the femur, and we actually brought in a backhoe and dug out some dirt. That's risky because such large equipment could really crush and break up some bones, but we had to start somewhere. Soon as we started getting down deep into the ground, we started seeing bones. We would stop and then proceed by hand. Let's see. The picture on the right, that odd-looking object sitting on top of the ground is actually tree root, and that's several feet below the surface. All of these bones were found several feet below ground. And the root is actually on top of a skull. Can you see down at the bottom of that picture? You can see a tooth attached to the skull. And so this tree root was taken out in order to get to the skull, and a sample of the tree was sent to a scientific lab and see if it could be radiocarbon dated to figure out how old it is. So if we figure out the age of these tree roots right next to the skull, gives us a general idea of how old that mammoth is. So I put up a picture for you to understand how radiocarbon dating is used. So carbon is produced in the atmosphere, and it's oxidized and formed carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide is used by plants in photosynthesis. And we know this whole process. So it goes into the plant. And carbon's also absorbed by oceans. Animals consume the plants that have taken in the carbon dioxide, and it's metabolized through their body. And so when animals die, their tissues stop deteriorating, and the carbon in their body stays for a length of time. The longer time period is, the less amount of carbon it is. And so that's what they're taking a look at, how much carbon remains in the product that they're testing to determine how long ago it would have lived. So this is one way that scientists have tried to date different things. So it came back that this tree trunk, it was, I'm trying to remember exactly, it was approximately 14,000 years old, if I remember correctly. So we're looking at toward the end of the last ice age. Okay, here were a few more pictures. I'm holding a part of a rib, and you'll see that there are grooves on that. And it shows that it was chewed by an animal sometime right after the animal died. Maybe it was cleaning off the bone. It's easy to tell if there were breaks in the bones or scratches or chew marks right after the animal died versus the bones being dug up and chewed more recently. Both of these bones in the pictures, they were from long ago, right after the animals died. The picture on the right, there's a flashlight being shown into a hole of a bone where something had chewed and gotten down into the marrow deep inside and wanted to eat that. Okay. Okay, so this is a picture. This is kind of toward the end of our talk here, and then I can take some questions. Our Environmental Learning Center is going to have a brand new display, and it's going to be a life-size woolly mammoth skeleton. It'll be a replica. We hope to incorporate a way to show which bones of the mammoth we have already discovered. And so that's kind of a plan in the future. But first and foremost, is to create this mammoth. And it's going to fill the space that we have indoors. So it'll be approximately 10 foot or so tall. It'll have a diorama around it so you can see the natural vegetation that would have been during its lifetime. The boxes around the mammoth are actually display cases. They're identical to what we have right now, and we house some of our bones inside here. These display cases are designed so that we can exchange bones, so people that come back to our building can see new ones over a period of time. So this will be, this is a small scale model of what's been made. And the interesting story about it is that it's being made right here in Oskaloosa. You think, oh, who can make a mammoth skeleton? You can go online and find different places. We even found a place in China that was within our price tag. And the only thing is, though, it would come disassembled. So we would have to assemble it, and the instructions, I'm not very good at reading Chinese. So happened to be talking to the right person at the right time and found someone in William Penn University that could create this. William Penn has an expanding 3D printers. They have a lab that, and they have a wide variety of different printers, and they came up with a plan how they can actually put this mammoth together. The neat thing about it is that it's going to be an interdepartmental project. So different departments, such as the department that makes videos, they're going to create a documentary about how it's made. Students are going to be working on it. Right now, there's a class going on where the students are learning how to do 3D printing, and they're being evaluated to see how well they're doing in class, and a select few will be chosen to work on the mammoth. And it will be a year-long process. So next fall, they'll start making it. And I don't know, it's just going to be really great. It's a win-win for our community, because down here in Mahaska County, that's our university that's right here in town, and having something this magnificent that they can actually make and show off to the country and the world, it's just a really great promotion for them too. And we're so proud that it can be done so close to home. Let's see here. So here's another side view of what it will look like. What you see in this picture is actually made by a 3D printer. They can even get the bones to be the actual color of what was taken out of the ground. Okay, I can answer a few questions now. I'll look for them on the Q&A, see if any pop up. And I'm going to go back to where you can just view me. I'm going to stop the share. Okay, there we go. And I have a few bones that I thought you would enjoy seeing. And to give you an idea about the size of these mammoths, I'm going to show you some of the toe bones. And I'll hold this up so you can see. Okay, so these are toe bones, and these are actually 3 bones that would have connected together at the very end of their foot. Now I'm going to show you, this is a replica human foot, and I have some of the fuzz left on, but we're looking at the bottom 3 bones, 1, 2, 3. That's what I just showed you. So the size of these 3 bones together are as big as my foot is right now. Okay, so these are actual bones that came out of the ground at our site, and they're not fossilized, they're actual bones. And I really like these, the set, so that you can actually see the size of what they look like. Now, another comparison, I'll show you this bone. And this is actually one vertebrae from a white-tailed deer of today. Okay, it's not a mammoth bone. It is a white-tailed deer. Now here is a small vertebrae, part of the backbone of a mammoth. Okay, this is a small one. And I'll put the two next together. Actually, that's the way it would go. Okay, this part of the vertebrae is called the process. And some of the processes are, gosh, I can't even put it in the picture, larger, much longer. And the hole that you see right here in the center is where the spinal cord goes through. And so the vertebrae would have been stacked one another this way. Okay. So, but this gives you an idea of how large these animals were. Another interesting thing about their foot is that they would have walked more on the tips of their toes than flat like our feet are. Okay, elephants do this too. They have 5 toes, and being elevated up like this, it makes them look like they are walking on pillars. And if you think of those heavy bones and the weight of their body, weighing about 4 tons, all of that weight on these pillar-like legs and feet, that helps them hold up all their weight. They wouldn't be able to do that had they had flat feet like humans do. Okay. One other object that I brought, this is made of plastic, and this is a 3D bone. So just to give you an idea of what a 3D bone can look just like the original, have all of the indentations. They can be made with the exact color of the real bone. This is one that I take to programs, and I let real small kids hold. I let them touch the actual bones. We have these bones set aside for educational purposes. Most of our other bones, they are in a storage on display in a climate controlled setting so that they stay in good condition. And that's one of the reasons why we have our environmental learning center, so we have a great place to put those bones and preserve them and give people an opportunity to learn about them and see them along with our other displays. Let's see here. Anybody have any questions? Susan has a question about any speculation on how these mammoths died. And that is an excellent question. No one really knows for sure why our woolly mammoths in Mahaska County had died. There are ideas. Now I mentioned before, we've had a lot of different people with scientific expertise come to the mammoth site. We've even had geologists come and they look at the dirt after we've dug. And the dirt in the whole area, there's areas where there's a flat wall that's been created after we've dug it out. And you can see all the layers, different layers of soil. And I was amazed watching the geologists. They would sit for the longest time and look at the layers of soil and what's in it and study it, because that soil is like a book for them. It tells the history of Iowa. In some areas, we can see where in the soil where there used to be a stream, it's in a different location than where the stream is today. So things have shifted. We don't know if at one time there was sort of like a wet area. Maybe they got stuck inside of it. It wouldn't have been like tar pits where they got stuck like that. But we don't know if they were hunted there. We don't see any indication on any of the bones to see where that they had been cleaned off by hunters. It's just a really good question. Nobody really knows. But that's okay for us. And, you know, as a person that teaches about this, that's a good question for all of our participants to think about. What is your thought about it? Okay, we don't know the correct answer. There isn't enough history from people living in the area to tell us. There isn't a lot that the bones can tell us. They tell us some things, but they don't tell us that answer. I wish it did, though. That would be good to know. Have we found any other bones somewhere else? As far as anywhere else in the county, no, we haven't. We do know that there are more bones at the site where we had dug, but we're not sure where to go. It's going to take some time and money to take some big equipment in and try to excavate the area a little bit more and try to figure out where the bones are. We'd probably put, we probably put good 3 years or so in working, trying to dig up some bones. And so that was kind of, we decided that's enough for now. It would be nice to go back again someday and dig some more. How do you tell between male and female mammoths? That's a good question. By looking at the bones. From what I understand, some of the teeth can be determined with, our teeth were sent to a laboratory and a sample was taken. And if I remember correctly, that they were able to take information from those teeth to tell if they were male and female. If you had more bones to look at, you can tell by the size of the skull and the tusks. The larger tusks were from the males. The females also had tusks. So that was one way. It's just really hard to tell if they're male or female, but that's our best guess that what we could do. Yes, I can show the slide again that showed different types of mammoths. I can do that in a bit, Lisa. Let's see. Is besides being a wet environment, this is a question, is there anything special about the soil where the bones and tree stump were found? That's a good question. I'll go back to the soil that the geologists were taking a close look at. Several feet down in this area, we would find a layer of real sandy layer. And the sand was so fine. And that's an indication that it was a very slow moving creek bed at one time where the creek used to be, one of the areas. And we would find bones sitting on top of that. So different soil types were an indication that bones could be close by. And another indication that we found were some clay. It's older clay than what we have today. And this clay, once it was exposed, it was very, very blue. And this blue clay, once it was exposed to oxygen long enough, it turned to the regular gray that we see today. And that was another indication that we were close to bones, was this blue clay. So the soil was very important. And that kind of brings into our thought that, you know, finding all these mammoth bones were extremely exciting. It's very fun to do, an important part of the project. But another important part was looking at the different soil layers, trying to find the history of Iowa back at that time. And so let's see, anybody else have another question? Okay. We are not sure how they died. I think you're trying to ask if we knew if they lived just in Iowa, if they were probably moved in from another state. And that's hard to tell. At the size of those animals were and how much food that they ate at one time, they would have to be mobile and move around a lot, trying to find enough food. Let's see. Which day was the first woolly mammoth found? I don't know the exact date, but it would have been August 2010. That's the closest I can give you. let's see, is the digging no longer taking place? No, we're not at this time. I'm sure the landowner is a time or two on his own, but we don't have any organized dig effort at this time. If we would have, the landowner would get a large donation to be able to bring in some large equipment, I'm sure that he'd be very willing to do that. Oh, good question here. Why aren't you using ground penetrating sonar? Actually, we have. I'm glad you brought that up. I almost forgot to mention it. We had, let's see, the University of Iowa's geoscience department head came out and he used a ground penetrating radar. The way that these work is that it sends waves down into the ground, and when it hits an object, the waves bounce back. So you can tell where an object it is and how far down in the ground it is. So this was used a few times at our area. However, because of the underground springs, a lot of moisture in the ground, it was not able to get accurate reading. We tried to do that in the summer where it was extremely dry. Everything else was more like a drought, but still that the natural springs underground didn't enable us to do that. The name of our county is Mahaska County. Oskaloosa is the county seat. So we're about 50 minutes southeast of Des Moines. Can visitors come and see the place where the bones are found? Oh, absolutely. Yeah, we have the Environmental Learning Center, which is in Oskaloosa. And it's on the east side, right on Highway 92. One of our landmarks out there besides the building, you'll see the Freedom Rock for Mahaska County is right there too. And right now, up until February 1st, we're open by appointment only. You can look us up online at www.mahaskaconservation.com. And we're also on Facebook under Mahaska County Conservation. Let's see. Have I heard of saber-tooth bones or sloth bones being found in eastern half of Iowa? No, I haven't heard of either one. If you want to find an answer to that, Jerry, a good person to or good location would be the University of Iowa. Contact the Museum of Natural History. They would have more documentation to answer that, but that's a good question. We have a question, is Farmer John able to work the land at this time? Where it was found, it was more of a cattle grazing area. It was too hilly for working any crops. He still raises cattle today. Sometimes we would have to put electric fence around the area that we're digging at to keep the cows out. That didn't always work, but it would keep them out most of the time. Let's see, what predators would be hunting it other than dire wolves, humans, or saber-tooth tigers? I apologize for my dog. He's barking at something outside. There would have been wolf species that would have hunted them. And actually, I'm trying to think of the name of it. Instead of saber-tooth tigers, let me see if I can find it. I have let's see. I believe it was the Homotherium. It's similar to the saber-tooth tiger. It had the large canine teeth, but I don't know as if there's actually been evidence of actual saber-tooth tigers in Iowa. I think so, but I'm not sure where. Okay, we have another question. Back then, was Mahaska a boreal forest? Yes, I'm glad you asked that, because we did a bore test, drilled down and took a sample of the earth way down low, where at the same level that the mammoth bones were found. And in that test, the soil test showed evidence of fir, spruce, and larch trees. So at that site, there would have been a boreal forest. Okay, so that's a good question.
Hey, Laura, I'm going to read you some questions I found in the chat here.
Okay.
Were any of the mammoths juvenile, or would you be able to tell if they were adult or juvenile?
You can. There's some different ways you can tell by the teeth by doing some testing on the teeth. Also the size of the bones and even the tusk. Now, you've heard of reading the tree rings on a tree trunk, correct? You can count the rings to figure out how old it is. You can do that very same thing with a mammoth tusk, looking at a cross section of it. So let's see. Farmer John had found a bone he believed that was from a juvenile. So you can tell by the size. Yeah. Did you have any other questions that need answered on there?
Yeah, once I went through the chat here, another one. Somebody asked how much like those bones would have weighed, like that large femur bone. How heavy are they?
Yeah, it's hard when you're not actually in front of us and can't see it. The femur bone was very heavy. When I held it, I thought, what object could I compare it to? If you've ever lifted a hay bale that was around 70, 80 pounds, that's what I would compare it to. It was very heavy, very dense. If you hold a tooth, I would compare it to a bowling ball. So those are also very heavy. Okay. Let's see, any other good question there I can answer?
And if anyone has any questions, you can type them into the Q&A button on your screen there. I didn't know if you wanted to share that slide with the 4 types of mammoths that Lisa asked earlier.
I will switch to that real quick.
Okay, and I'll go through the questions here. And somebody else asked if you had any more pictures from your digging site, or would be any pictures, photos be online that maybe they could access and view?
I could probably bring some up here. I don't have any online to view. I do know if you go to YouTube and type in Mahaska County Mammoth, you can see a variety of videos that were made. Okay, here it is. So here is the picture of the different mammoths. So originally, it would have thought that our woolly mammoths would have been Columbian mammoths because they'd probably be the most common in the area, I guess, besides woolly mammoths now. The ribs, I have a question on how heavy is the rib cage. All the ribs together would probably be quite heavy, but if you held one, it's not that incredibly heavy, but they're very long. Some of them are longer than my leg. They're just a good indication of showing how big they are. Hey, do you see any other questions?
No, I think that's all the questions that I could find here.
Okay. Let me see. How about if I pull up a few pictures from our dig, and I'll just pull up some interesting ones.
Great. And just to note, a few of our attendees tonight, participants tonight, attended some of the digs. So that was kind of nice.
Oh,
I don't know if
great.
folks can read the chat. So it sounds like we have a few people on here with us that were able to participate in that. So what a great opportunity.
Okay. Yeah.
And then
I
a
might
question
recognize
just,
your names.
yeah, maybe. A question just popped up while you're looking for some photos. Were any Native American artifacts encountered while doing the dig?
Okay. There was one arrowhead that we encountered, but it had nothing to do with the mammoth. It's dated much more recent than the woolly mammoths. Let's see. Okay, here we are. Let's go back to share. Let's see if I can find it. Here it is. Okay, so these are all of my pictures from here. Let's go to, here's some interesting, we'll take a look at some teeth. So this is a picture of the tooth underground. Does everybody see that okay? Oops, let's see if it comes. Oh, there it is. Can you see that? Okay, so this is a picture of a tooth in the ground. And these dark lines you see toward the top of the picture, those are the roots. It's not connected to a skull. It's just sitting in the ground. And
Laura, I'm not sure the photo came up. I'm not seeing it on my screen.
Okay, it must not work since I don't have it in a special program to share.
Okay.
Okay, maybe that won't work.
I mean, we can see the photos in your folder here.
Oh, in the folder?
Yep,
Okay.
it just, when you double clicked it, it didn't pop up.
Okay, let me go back to it. I'll start over. Okay, sure. All right, so you can see these pictures in the folder. It's not letting me enlarge one specific one. These are all teeth pictures. Let me try. It's not letting me bring it down. Okay, let me try a different one. Oops. Group dig pics. This is a good one. All right, here's a. See if it lets us see it. Is it showing this picture?
No, I'm just seeing the file folder. I wonder, maybe if you go up under view and just make the icons extra large, we should be able to see
That's what I was thinking. Oh, view, here it
them that
is.
way.
Extra large icons.
Yep, and now we can see a few at a time here.
Spread them out a little bit. Okay, can you see those a little better?
Yeah, that shows
Okay.
up well.
So this just shows, these are my file folder of group dig pics of groups of people that have come. You can see them using the small tools, even little wooden sticks to dig dirt out around different bones. If I find something up close. Let's see. It would be fun if somebody saw themselves
Yeah,
on one of these.
that'd be cool.
Okay. Okay, here's something good to show you. These are pictures of what we call the wall, areas that we have dug, and we created a flat wall so that we can see the different layers. And so that's what the geologists looked at. In the picture third from the right on the top, you can see that there's a dark area along the wall, sort of comes down at an angle. That is more recent soil that's filled in an area that used to be a creek bed. So that's an example of what the geologists would look at in trying to figure out what happened in Iowa's history. So that's an old stream bed right there where the dark is. Okay.
Laura, I have another question here. Somebody asked, where could they make a donation to further this excavation at some point?
I just saw that question too. I would contact our conservation board and we can get you in connection with the landowner. You could even email me at DeCook, DECOOK, at mahaskacounty.org. and we can get you in contact.
And so maybe what I can do, Laura, I'll do a follow-up email with a recording of tonight's presentation, and I'll include your contact information and Mahaska County Conservation, your phone number and email there.
Yeah.
So folks can get in touch then if
Yeah.
have any follow-up questions or want to make a donation for a dig.
Sure. Okay. And if you want to see any specific picture, I could sure forward one to you also.
Another question that popped up here, Laura, from the size of the tooth marks on the bones, can you guess what type of animal chewed on the bones?
Oh, that's a good one. I asked the very same question, and the best assumption, it would have been a wolf that would have done that based on the width of the marks, the teeth marks on it. I was hoping they'd say like saber-toothed tiger or something, but they said, no, it's probably more like a wolf.
Still cool.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And did you answer this at the beginning when you talked about the different mammoths, the weight of a full-size woolly mammoth?
A woolly would have been about 4 tons.
4 tons, wow.
Yeah, yeah, that's big.
That's huge.
Yes, yes. Let's see here. Oops, that's not gonna work. I wish I could just click on the pictures themselves.
I think if you open the pictures and you reshare your screen, then it should work.
Okay. Let me find the one. Okay, we'll try that reshare. Well, I'll try that again. Share.
And now kind of select that photo. There you go. Awesome.
Did that work?
Yep, that worked. Yep.
Oh, okay. That'd be kind of hard to do to every picture.
Yeah.
But I selected this one because this is how we found bones in the ground. Those are 2 ribs crisscrossed.
Wow.
And the way we dug these up, we didn't go in and just pull it out. Looks like that person's going to pull the bone out, but that's not what we did. We would dig all around every bone in that area, and enough dirt so that they were pretty much sitting on a pedestal of dirt, like they're just sitting in the air. We would take photographs, we would document where we found it, what the bones were, what the weather was like that day, who was at the dig site. We would do a lot of documentation. And then once we had all of our documentation lined up, we would then take it out. If they're small enough, we'd put them in a bag with labels. We'd put them in a container and label them. And then they'd be transported to storage. All of these bones have been cleaned to get all the dirt off of them. Let's see. And if we found a bone, we would stick a colored flag in the ground. So wherever you saw a bone or a flag, you do not step.
Smart.
Don't break them.
A couple questions popped up here. Did you find any dinosaur bones?
No dinosaur bones. I showed early on with that timeline, dinosaurs were way earlier than the woolly mammoths, but sure, if we would have found dinosaur bones, that would be exciting too, but no, we didn't.
And then are you reading the questions there, Laura?
Yeah, I'm kind of scanning through. Go ahead and read it.
Yep. Somebody asked, what other places are woolly mammoths found? So kind of what is their range maybe?
Okay. Generally what it looks like, they're found in the northern hemisphere all around the world. Okay. That's kind of their cutoff line.
And I think you answered.
Okay, go ahead.
I think you answered it. How far under the surface were these bones found? And you said several feet.
Several feet, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
And maybe read those last two and
yeah. I am. Did you have to do anything to stabilize the bones so they did not deteriorate when they dried out? Yeah, that's a really good question, Ben. We would have them cleaned with water, even saline water, so it didn't have chemicals in it. Try to keep them as clean as possible. And there is a special glue that we learned about. It's called, let me see, B72. And it is sort of like a super glue on steroids. You could think of it like that. And it would be, excuse me, coated on the bones. And it would give them a shiny appearance, but it would also protect them, to keep them from fingerprints, getting oils on them, protect them in that way. The idea is to help them keep getting chipped and fall apart, because they will dry out over time. Right now, they are all kept in a climate controlled building. Our learning center is, and we have another building that's climate controlled where we keep more bones, to keep them in the best condition that we can. And also the sunlight that comes into our building, we have special windows to help block out some of the UV, to keep them in good condition too. Let's see, here's a question. I know about research on moose and that the teeth can give levels of various elements that became embedded from the environment. Have you performed any analysis such as that? Oh, good question. Yes, our teeth, all of our teeth were sent in. A sample was taken, and they were able to do some detailed analysis. And by the teeth, they were able to determine that all of these mammoths had died about the same time. It doesn't give the exact day they would have died on, but it just said that they were at different ages of mammoths, but they had died pretty close to the same time. And that adds to the mystery of, well, how did they die? Just another element there. But the teeth can give various information from their environment. I believe it also tells about the health of the animal, if at some time it was sick, or if they were healthy, various things like that. And that there's a lot more into that I'm not familiar with, but I do know that teeth are very valuable to get information. Good question. A mammoth park be a dream for the near future. Well, we have our environmental learning center. That's kind of our dream right there. I guess you could say that is just a cue in to something else that we have, talking about a mammoth dream. Some of us have written a mammoth book. It's actually a children's book. And we wanted to do something that was is a picture book that's, actually for all ages to enjoy. It's called Mahaska Mammoth Woolly Dreams. And so that's kind of what made me spin into that. We wanted a book that gave information about the Ice Age and mammoths, and yet have a fun storyline. And so the book was printed close by in Pella. And the book has actual photographs in there of the mammoth dig and of the bones, but yet also tells a story and has a timeline in it. And you can buy them online. There's a bookstore here in Oskaloosa that you can buy them into. So if you come visit the bones, you can get a book. It's called Mahaska Mammoth Woolly Dreams. And oh, here it is. I found it. This is our soft cover that we have. And so you can see the book. It was a kind of a dream of mine to be able to write a children's book at some time. And so it was fun to be able to do that. So this is our story, where our book is. And on the side of the pages, it gives factual information about mammoths in the Ice Age. the inside tells a story. There's a little hidden mouse that kids can find on the pages. And the very back of the book, it tells about the mammoths found here in Mahaska County. And we give credit to some of the other bones that have been found in Iowa also. Bones that found in the Ice Age at different places. Okay. Any other questions? Those of you that have been to the dig, do you have any special memories or something that you'd like to share about your experience? Because you learned things too, just like I did. When people came to the dig, you didn't have to have experience. We showed you what to do. And if you found a bone and got it out of the ground, you got credit for it. You got to have pictures taken. It was a fun experience. Okay.
Awesome. Yeah, just looking through a few more of these. We really appreciate, Laura, you taking the time and joining us this evening. Just kind of fascinating that this was happening right here in Iowa, you know, just this past decade.
Yeah. Well, like I mentioned, a lot of times we think about the history of Iowa, at least my brain stopped at the Native Americans, but this is before then. Yeah, you just don't know what's underfoot. How many of you are going to go in your backyard this spring and start digging?
Okay,
any other questions?
all right.
If you do come out to our Learning Center to look at the mammoths, just let me know that you saw it on this online session, and I'll kind of connect and know what we've talked about, and we can show you what we have on display. And yep.
Great. Awesome. Well, thanks again, Laura. We really appreciate you taking the time. So folks, if you have any other questions for Laura or just maybe want to get in touch, you can contact her through Mahaska County Conservation. They're in Oskaloosa, Iowa. And if you're interested in joining us for any other virtual programs, I can share that screen again where I had some of our upcoming events here. Does that show up on the screen? So thank you everyone for joining us tonight. If you'd like to join us in February or March for our online virtual events, register like you did tonight, send us an email. My email's there on the screen, and we'll get you the Zoom webinar link sent out for you guys to view it. So thanks again.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad you can all do this.
Yes, we could all enjoy it here in our homes, not be out in the snowstorm. Normally we would cancel a program this evening with the weather, and so it was great to be able to still have it. So wonderful. All right. Thanks, Laura. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.